Hello and welcome to Emily Cat 176. It's Friday and that means books. And I said last week, I think it was last week, I said that I had another true crime book that I've recently read. And it is this one, In the Dead of Night. Now, this incident happened in 2020 and this was huge in Australia. It was just before the lockdown. Sorry, itchy nose, hay fever. It was huge in Australia. I think it might have been overseas as well, but it was just absolutely huge. So Russell Hill and Carol Clay, they were people in their 70s. And they went up camping in Wonnangatta. Now, Wonnangatta is the high country here in Victoria, very isolated. Camping. They were camping. You camp up there. People hunt up there. And there have also been some mysterious disappearances up there over the years. If you look into it, they have. But Russell Hill, he'd been a logger. So he knew this area very well. He loved camping. And his wife thought that he was going camping on his own. What she didn't know was, because when he was apparently contacting her and his radio people. He did radio and it just stopped. It stopped. I think it was a Friday night when it stopped. And it was only when he disappeared and the police asked him about Carol. She had no idea Carol Clay was with him because they had started a relationship after Carol divorced. They'd been boyfriend, girlfriend when they were younger, and when Carol divorced, they started again. So Carol's family knew about him, his family knew nothing about her. So it was a real mystery. And I'll show you a photo that see this photo here? This was splashed on every newspaper. Everything was burnt. And you can see, I'll put it a bit closer, even his car's got scorch marks. This was discovered a few days later. That was their campsite and it was completely burnt out. Everything was burnt and they were gone. And it was a real mystery. It was a real mystery what had happened to them. Had they run away? What had happened to them? And then last year, was it last year? The police announced they had arrested someone. And this book, it's very good because it says about the crime. Now, the one that's been charged, and he had been found guilty, this year he was convicted and sentenced to 32 years. It's just the last few days he's put an appeal in because he's saying that it was an accident. So his name is Greg Lynn. And it's interesting because this book, it shows that the police were onto him quite quickly. And the first thing they noticed when they went to talk to him to begin with, that he'd painted his car a different colour. Now, that doesn't mean he's guilty. I'm not saying whether, I know what I think, but I mean, the one good thing about this book is because he did like hours of interview, but it's interesting how court systems work, and the jury only heard a very small part of his interview, whereas this book's got more of his interviews. And it's well written, it's informative, and in those interviews, I think he lied a lot, but there was the truth in what he was saying, what led to what happened. So his story is that because everything was gone except, yes, everything was burnt. The phones were missing, and Russell Hill had a drone, and that was gone as well. And this is it. Everyone was fascinated about what might have happened. Were they murdered? Did they run away? And of course, Greg Lynn said he was annoyed. Russell Hill, with his drone, filmed him hunting. He played loud music. Russell Hill crept up to his car, took out a loaded gun, and then shot it up in the air. And then they were grappling with the gun. It went off, accidentally killed Carol Clay, shot her in the head, and then Russell Hill grabbed a knife from somewhere, and they were grappling with that, and he stabbed himself. So the whole thing was an accident as far as he's concerned. But then this book, and it shows, he transported the bodies, and he absolutely destroyed the bodies. And he went back more than once to destroy the bodies. Very interesting. I think it's, well, I do. I think it's unbelievable what he's saying. You know, he's a fit man in his 40s or whatever he was, and then this 70-plus-year-old man's. No, I don't believe that. So yes, he was, and this is what the book says. You know, that he was in the police's minds very early on, because he was caught on camera, and Russell Hill's phone was in his car. He didn't switch it off, and he went through this area because someone had heard this car at night. They'd gone up some road, it was blocked, and then had to turn around, and it was really noisy because he had to do so many backwards and forwards as to get back and go a different way. And with all that, they cleared every other car except his, and that was the one. Russell Hill's phone went pinged at the same time. So he did actually tell the police what was left of their bodies. So he reckons it was an accident, and then he panicked. And he's a pilot. He's a very calm, connected pilot. So it's really interesting. Really, really interesting. And said this book just lays it out. But it's good that they've got more of the interviews, because of course the public never heard anything other than like the jury heard. And of course there are rules in court for different things. And because they saw nothing of him lying, and how he couldn't prove why the phone was with him and all this sort of thing. So yeah, so he's been found guilty, but there is now an appeal. So we will see what happens. Of course, another victim of all this is Russell Hill's wife, Robin, because she's a very innocent victim in all this. And Greg Lynn, it's interesting. It's interesting with Greg Lynn, because his first wife died, as did two of his neighbours. And I'm not saying anything. You look, if you're interested, look up the Zigzag Road murders, and that's all I'm saying. His first wife died, and so did two of his neighbours. So yeah, it's a really good book, because I said I like true crime, and I said this crime was huge in Australia, because the police also said, and I mean, I'm not one that camps, so I don't know, they couldn't work out why their camp wasn't, it was very near a river, and apparently when you camp, you camp by a river. I don't know, I don't camp, which made people think, well, someone else must have been there. And this was it. This was Greg Lynn. He was there. So yeah, as I said, if you're interested, look at the case. And if you're interested, get this book. It's well written. Very well written. And it goes into all the work the police did and how they tried to use the media, and they worked out what he watched and what radio stations he listened to. Very, very interesting. So yeah, this is it. Now there was one thing with this. Carol Clay, she was very high up in the CWA. She had worked for them for years, raised so much money, whatever. When all this came about, the CWA, because she'd been carrying on with a married man, took her off all their things, which I think is so petty, really is. But anyway, apart from that, as I said, he has been found guilty and he's putting in an appeal. Whether it will work, because what happened was with the court, they found him not guilty of Russell Hill's murder because they couldn't prove it, and he was found guilty of Carol Clay's murder. And this is what the defence is saying. You can't have it both ways. But I can understand why there's no proof of the way Russell Hill was killed, but they've proven that Carol Clay was shot in the head. So, yeah, as I said, that's it. Have a look. Look up this case if you're interested. And this is another really well-written true crime book. Okay, so that's Books on Friday. Enjoy your weekend, and I'll be back on Monday. Bye.